As a child, my life was based on one simple principle. My parents would say something and I would do it. Now, don't get me wrong, I went through my own phase of teen angst and the whole, "you just don't understand me right now" phase. That was so 8 days ago. Or so I thought. Currently, there is a void in the Chotalla household. A battle so monumental that the movie announcer guy should movie announce it. A battle between two Indian parents and one Indian me. You see, I'm a Sikh, and in Sikhism, we aren't supposed to cut our hair out of reverence to one of God's greatest gifts. But as fun as it is walking around in the summer with a face pelt, I decided to trim my beard, and suddenly I'm a bad Sikh. My parents refused to even listen to why I trim my beard, and their refusal to accept my personal practice of the religion that I believe in hurts. This problem, our refusal to learn about and accept others' cultures and religions as valid, spans the country. According to the Washington Post, 92% of Americans believe in a higher being. But then according to a study conducted by the University of New York, there are over 300 religions practiced in the United States. In this confusing maze of dogma that we have created for ourselves, we have lost sight of the very essence of religion: to be a good person. But more than that, when we refuse to learn about others' cultures and beliefs, it creates a cycle of misunderstanding that results in violence and stagnation. So today, in order to break the cycle, we will begin by examining the two roots of the problem: our inability to accept differences and our unwillingness to see similarities, before combing over some of the impacts and finally parting it all to find a solution. Now, much like my beard, the problem is very obvious and on our faces. To put it simply, we refuse to learn about others' cultures and beliefs. During the previous presidential election, a Gallup poll found that 1 in 5 Americans wouldn't vote for Mitt Romney simply because he was Mormon. Which is disturbing because according to the Pew Research Center, approximately 2/3 of all Americans know little to nothing about Mormonism. Meaning that so many of us are willing to make such a big decision based on perceived differences rather than actual information. All too often, we ignore nuance and favor ignorance, turning our own beliefs into simple binaries that can be easily debated and won, rather than discussed and appreciated. Because, let's face it, you can't win a discussion. I bet we all know what it feels like to simply be waiting for our turn to speak, rather than listening to and absorbing the conversation. Until we learn to actually listen, we will not be able to appreciate others' differences. Now that being said, this obsession with being right not only means that we're unable to see differences, but it also means that we're unwilling to accept similarities. This stereotyping results from what Sigmund Freud once described as the narcissism of minor difference, or the smaller the differences are between us, the greater we blow them out of proportion. So, is there really any difference between an Xbox 360 and a PS3? I mean, was it necessary for JCat007X to say on an online forum, "Shut up, you poser, PS3 is better"? Or was it necessary for Dodgers fans to put Brian Stowe into a coma simply for being a Giants fan? Or was it necessary for 15,000 people to die simply because somebody referred to themselves as a crip or a blood. All too often, we verbally abuse, fight, and sometimes even kill others that play the same games that we play, watch the same sports that we watch, and feel the same sense of community that we all feel. Our refusal to accept differences and to see similarities between various belief systems leaves us in a cycle of misunderstanding that fuels violence. A few days after 9/11, a member of my own community, Balbir Singh Sodhi, was shot to death while planting flowers outside of his own gas station in Mesa, Arizona. The killer, Frank Roque, saw a turban and a beard and thought, terrorist. Directly after, many members of my own community chose to cut their hair and remove their turbans, rather than risk being targets for further violence. A reasonable fear of harm came in between them and their beliefs. But this quiet submission to fear only served to further perpetuate this cycle of misunderstanding. However, I'm proud to say that I saw an example of the kind of mettle that it takes to help break a cycle of fear, ignorance, and hate. That example was my dad. You see, he didn't give in to the fear. Instead, he stuck by his own beliefs and made a plan. He wanted to help raise awareness in the community, and so we went to churches and gave presentations on Sikhism. I remember seeing something on the faces of the people there. Not fear, hate, or mistrust, but understanding. We need willing listeners as well as passionate teachers in order to help make a change. It's simply a matter of sharing, listening, sticking together, and recognizing that we all have things to learn. Now, our preconceived notions will not wither away after passively listening to some 10-minute speech. But we have to realize that we all have an obligation to learn about the cultures and religions of those around us before forming our opinions of them. And yes, this might mean that you have to learn what the word jihad actually means before laughing at some terrorist joke. Already know what it means? Great. Go further. Learn what it means to be Baha'i, or understand the differences between the various sects of Buddhism, and start a dialogue. I understand. What I'm asking you to do is hard. I mean, I'm a Sikh boy, nicknamed Quran, attending a Catholic school. People ask me questions all the time, like, do you wish you could eat bacon? I can, by the way. So yeah, it's difficult, but try using active listening techniques, meaning that the next time you're in a discussion with someone, paraphrase what they just said back to them in the form of a question, ensuring that you understood what they just said. For example, you could say something like, Quran, did you mean to say that we need to work toward mutual understanding of our beliefs in order to coexist and prosper? To which I would say, yes. Thank you for listening. Communication achieved. But when we do compare, we need to look for common ground. Watch this. Christianity. Love thy neighbor as you love thyself. Mark 12:31. In Judaism, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Leviticus 19:18. In Islam, no one truly believes until he wishes for his brother what he wishes for himself. Number 13 of Al Nawawi's 40 Hadiths. And finally, in Sikhism, Guru Arjan Dev Ji once said, "No one is my enemy, none a stranger, and everyone is my friend." Magic, right? We have been focusing far too much on who is right, and not nearly enough on what is right. Much like the ancient Chinese proverb states, there are many paths to the top of the mountain, but the view is always the same. So after giving this speech to my parents, all was well, and I went out and got a military-style buzz cut. Okay, it obviously doesn't work that way, but it's a start. And it's okay to believe in one thing or many things or nothing. It's okay to believe in something different. But no matter what you believe in, it seems hypocritical to do anything other than love your fellow human beings. Because it's the acts of love that we share and the things that we do that make us good Christians, devout Jews, faithful Sikhs, and loving people. Everything else is just splitting hairs.